Picture this scenario. You have been working for 32 years. You have done everything you were told to do. You put money into your 401k, you got the company match, you watched that number climb from 5 figures to 6 figures to maybe even 7. And then one morning, you are 63 years old, sitting at your kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and you pull up your retirement account. You see the number. Let's say it is $840,000. And you think to yourself, I did it. I can retire. So you do. You put in your notice. You have a little party at the office. People sign a card. Maybe someone brings a cake. And for the first 6 months, everything feels amazing. You sleep in. You travel a little. You fix up the house. But then something starts to creep in. You check your account in month 7, and it is $811,000. By month 14, it is $762,000. The market dipped 9% that quarter, and you also pulled out $4,200 a month to live on. Now your brain starts doing math it has never had to do before. You are spending $50,400 a year. Your portfolio just lost $78,000 in 14 months between withdrawals and market losses. At this rate, you will burn through everything in roughly 15 years. You will be 78 years old with nothing. And here is the part that will keep you up at night. The average retirement lasts between 20 and 30 years. You are on pace to run out of money a full decade before you run out of life. And this is not some rare horror story. According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, 40.6% of American households, headed by someone between 35 and 64, are projected to run out of money in retirement, 4 out of 10. And when you add in the ones who will have to dramatically cut their standard of living, that number climbs closer to 64%. This is not bad luck. This is not a broken market. This is a mathematical trap that almost nobody sees until they are already inside it. My name is Ban, and I spend way too much time buried in retirement data, tax code updates, and portfolio withdrawal research so that you do not have to. If you feel like you have been saving for decades but still have no idea whether you can actually afford to stop working, you are not alone. And honestly, you are not wrong to feel that way. We are not talking about stock picks today. We are not talking about crypto. We are not talking about some magic investment that is going to solve all your problems. We are talking about the exposed wiring behind the retirement system, the exposed wiring that nobody is showing you, and the 10 mathematical habits that separate the people who retire in peace from the people who retire in panic. If that sounds like something you need to hear, do me a favor right now. Hit subscribe, hit the like button. I'm going to keep making these breakdowns because the mainstream financial media is not going to do it for you. They're too busy selling you the next hot fund. Here's the thing about retirement that most experts get completely wrong. They treat it like a math problem with one variable. How much did you save? But retirement is not a single math problem. It is a cascading series of decisions where one miscalculation in year 2 can destroy your plan in year 17. And the people who navigate it successfully are not smarter, they're not luckier. They just built a set of boring, unglamorous habits that compound over time, the same way interest does. Let me introduce you to what I call the margin theory of retirement. Think about it like this. There is an old concept called the boots theory. A rich man buys a pair of $100 boots that last 10 years. A poor man buys a pair of $20 boots that fall apart in 2 years. Over 10 years, the poor man spends $100 on boots and still has wet feet. The rich man spent the same amount and stayed dry the whole time. The difference was not income, it was margin. The rich man had enough margin, enough gap between what he earned and what he spent to make the better long-term decision. Retirement works exactly the same way. Here's how the math breaks down. I have sat across from data showing people earning $500,000 a year who retired anxiously because they spent $500,000 a year. They had zero margin. And I have looked at data on people earning $75,000 a year who retired completely calm because they lived on $60,000 and protected the $15,000 gap every single year. That is a 20% margin. Over 30 working years, that $15,000 a year, invested at an average 7% return, grows to roughly $1.42 million. The person making $500,000 with no margin retires with anxiety. The person making $75,000 with a 20% margin retires with $1.42 million and sleeps like a baby. To put this in perspective, the difference between retiring broke and retiring with over $1 million was not a six-figure salary. It was $15,000 a year of discipline. That is $1,250 a month. That is the car payment and the subscription bundle most people do not even think about. You do not build a margin like that unless you have decided, consciously and deliberately, that your future self matters more than your present comfort. And that's the only logical conclusion. Wealth is not income. Wealth is margin. The gap between what comes in and what goes out is the single most important number in your financial life. Now, here is where it gets darker, because even people who build margin often sabotage themselves with the next mistake. They save manually. They decide each month whether to invest or not. And every time you make saving a decision, you give yourself a chance to decide not to. The data on this is brutal. Fidelity released a study showing that their most successful retirement savers had one thing in common. It was not that they picked better funds. It was that they automated their contributions. The money came out of their paycheck before they ever saw it, automatically, on the 1st of the month or the 15th, before they could talk themselves out of it. Think about this. If you earn $6,000 a month and you automate 15% into your retirement account, that is $900 a month you never see. You learn to live on $5,100. Your brain adjusts, your spending adapts, and in 25 years at 7% average returns, that $900 a month becomes roughly $811,000. But here's the thing. If you try to do it manually, studies show the average person skips 3 to 4 months a year. They had an unexpected expense. They wanted to take a trip. They forgot. Those 3 to 4 missed months over 25 years cost you between $140,000 and $190,000 in lost compounding. That is nearly a quarter of your retirement gone because you relied on willpower instead of automation. You do not save what is left after spending. You spend what is left after saving. And if you cannot trust yourself to do that every single month, you automate it and take yourself out of the equation entirely. But it gets worse, because even the people who automate, even the people who build margin, they often blow it all up at the worst possible moment. They panic sell. March 2020, the market drops 34% in 23 trading days, fastest crash in history. And what did millions of Americans do? They sold. They locked in losses. They went to cash. And then the market recovered 68% in the next 5 months. The people who sold missed one of the greatest recoveries in market history. J.P. Morgan published a study showing that if you missed just the 10 best days in the S&P 500 over a 20-year period from 2003 to 2023, your annualized return dropped from 9.8% to 5.6%. Miss the best 20 days and your return dropped to 2.9%. Miss the best 30 days and you actually lost money. And here is the cruel part. The best days almost always happen right after the worst days. They cluster together. So when you sell during a crash, you are almost guaranteed to miss the recovery. Now you might be thinking, but Ben, what if I just get out before the crash and get back in at the bottom? And I hear you. That sounds logical. But the data says it is nearly impossible. A study from Dalbar showed that the average equity fund investor earned 3.6% annually over a 30-year period, while the S&P 500 returned 10.7%. That is not because they picked bad funds. It is because they bought high and sold low, over and over again, driven by emotion. The most successful retirees I have studied did the hardest thing on this entire list. They did nothing. They stayed invested through the noise, through 2008, through 2020, through every dinner party where someone told them the market was about to crash and they should move everything into gold or Bitcoin or whatever. They understood that short-term pain is the price of long-term gain. Now, here's why this matters to you specifically. Because those three habits, living below your means, automating your savings, and staying invested through the noise, those are how you build the wealth. But building wealth is only half the battle. And this is where most people assume the hard work is done. They think, I saved the money, I stayed the course, now I can coast. But coasting in retirement is how you crash. The next 7 habits are what separate the retirees who are constantly anxious from the ones who actually enjoy what they built. And the first one is deceptively simple. You have to know your spending number. Not, I think we spend about $7,000 a month. Not, we are pretty frugal. You need the actual math. Your essential expenses, the bare bones number you cannot go below, and your discretionary expenses, the flexible spending you can adjust. Because spending drives everything in a retirement plan. Your income plan is based on it, your tax plan is based on it, your portfolio risk is based on it. If you get the spending number wrong by even 15%, your entire plan can be off by hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 25-year retirement. Confidence in retirement does not come from optimism. It comes from clarity. Now, here's the critical part that is going to drive some people crazy. You need cash. And I don't mean shove everything under a mattress. I mean strategic, intentional, on-purpose cash. 1 to 2 years of living expenses sitting in short-term liquid positions. Because cash is not lazy money. Cash is a volatility buffer. When the market drops 25%, you don't have to sell your stocks at the bottom just to pay your electric bill. You spend from your cash reserve. You let your portfolio recover. And here's the math that most people miss. Having that cash buffer actually allows you to invest the rest of your portfolio more aggressively, which historically produces higher long-term returns. So the drag of holding cash is often more than offset by the higher returns on the invested portion. Cash buys behavioral stability, and behavioral stability is worth more than an extra 0.5% of return. Stay with me, because this next one is where I get genuinely frustrated. Tax planning. Most people think about taxes once a year, in April. File, pay, done. But the retirees who are doing this well think about taxes in May right after they file, using that return to build a base case for the next year. Then they think about taxes again before December 31st, every single year. They are doing proactive Roth conversions when their income is low. They are managing their tax brackets deliberately. They're watching for the Medicare IRMA cliff so they do not accidentally trigger $3,000 or $4,000 a year in higher premiums just because they pulled $1,000 too much from their IRA. And here's what the smart money already figured out. The goal is not the lowest taxes this year. The goal is the lowest taxes over your lifetime. Sometimes that means paying more today to pay dramatically less later. If you have a $1.2 million traditional IRA and you do nothing, your required minimum distributions at age 73 could force you into a 24% bracket and trigger IRMA surcharges on top of it. But if you convert $80,000 to $100,000 a year in your early retirement years when your income is low, you might pay 12 to 22% now and save yourself from 24% plus IRMA later. Over a 20-year retirement, that difference can be $150,000 to $300,000 in tax savings, but almost nobody does it because it is counterintuitive. It hurts to write a bigger check today for a benefit you cannot see yet. Now here's where it gets interesting. The retirees who do this best stop thinking about their portfolio as a scoreboard and start thinking about it as a paycheck. This is a massive mindset shift. When you were working, you watched your account balance go up. That number was your score. Higher was better. But in retirement, the question is not how much did I make this year? The question is, how do I turn this into reliable income I can spend without running out? And that means designing a withdrawal strategy. Which accounts do I pull from first? When do I claim Social Security? How do my pension or rental income or other sources fit together? You are designing cash flow, not chasing returns. And one of the hardest psychological transitions in all of personal finance is going from watching a number grow to watching a number shrink and being okay with it. That is why structuring a retirement paycheck, a specific amount that hits your bank account on the 1st or 15th of every month, is so powerful. It replicates the rhythm of working life. It removes the anxiety of ad hoc withdrawals, and it forces you to build liquidity and safety into your portfolio to sustain that paycheck no matter what the market does. But here's the thing. This situation is fluid. Life does not stop changing because you retired. Your retirement date might move. A health event might happen. You might decide to help your kids buy a house. You might want to downsize. Any of these shifts can change the math, so you need to revisit your plan. Not once, continuously. Good retirement planning is not a document you create and shove in a drawer. It is a living system you check in on every time life throws you a curveball. And when you see a major life change happening, that's your cue to rerun the numbers and make sure everything still works. And then there are the decisions nobody wants to talk about. Insurance, estate planning, long-term care, health coverage before Medicare at 65, umbrella policies. These are the most boring decisions on this entire list and also the most consequential. One uninsured long-term care event can cost $90,000 to $120,000 a year. One lawsuit without umbrella coverage can wipe out decades of savings. One missing healthcare bridge between early retirement and Medicare can cost $25,000 a year in premiums alone. The retirees who feel the most secure made these decisions early and then told their families about them, because stress in retirement often comes from uncertainty, and making these boring risk decisions removes uncertainty. So what do we actually do with all of this information? Look, the first thing you need to do is protect what you already have. Calculate your margin. Know your spending number down to the dollar. Build your cash buffer, 1 to 2 years of living expenses in liquid positions. Do not let anyone tell you that cash is a waste. Cash is your insurance policy against being forced to sell investments at the worst possible time. Now here's the opportunity. While everyone else is panicking about market volatility or chasing the next hot stock, you can be designing your income. Build your withdrawal strategy, figure out your Social Security timing, create your retirement paycheck, and start your tax planning now, not in April, now. Because every year you wait on Roth conversions is a year of tax savings you will never get back. And the moment you see a major life change on the horizon, a health event, a move, a family situation, that is when you rerun your numbers immediately. Do not wait for your annual review. The math does not care about your calendar. Now, I'm not saying you need to do all of this tomorrow, but what I am saying is you need a plan. Because when this thing moves, when the market corrects, when tax rates change, when healthcare costs spike, it is going to move fast. And the people who already have their system in place are going to be fine. The people who do not are going to be the 64%. And here's the last thing, and it might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Give your money a job. Every dollar in your plan should have a purpose. This money is for income over the next 5 years. This money is for growth, and we are not touching it for a decade. This money is the safety net. This money is for the grandkids someday. Because when your money has a purpose, you stop second guessing. When the market drops, you do not panic because you know the money you need this year is not in the market. When you spend on a trip or a gift, you do not feel guilty because that's exactly what that money was for. Purpose reduces anxiety. Purpose turns spending from stressful to intentional. And here's the truth that almost nobody talks about. Retirement is not about dying rich. It's about living well. The people who give their money a job actually enjoy the wealth they built. The people who do not, they hoard it. They white-knuckle it. They grip onto every dollar afraid they're going to lose it. And then they often end up leaving behind far more than they ever intended because they could never give themselves permission to spend. That is not financial success. That is financial fear wearing a mask. The 64% number is not just a statistic. It is a countdown clock, and it is ticking for anyone who does not have these habits locked in. Live below your means. Automate your savings. Stay invested through the noise. Know your spending number. Use cash strategically. Plan taxes every year. Design income instead of chasing returns. Revisit your plan when life changes. Make the boring risk decisions early and give every dollar a job. None of these are exciting. None of these will impress anyone at a dinner party. But if your retirement plan feels boring, that is usually a very good sign. If this sparked something in you, if it made you think differently about your own plan, do me a favor, share this with someone who needs to hear it. A parent, a spouse, a friend who is 5 years from retirement and still winging it. We do not talk about this enough. The mainstream financial media would rather sell you a hot take than show you the boring math that actually works. Hit subscribe because we are going to keep breaking down the mechanics behind the money, the stuff that actually matters, the stuff that actually protects your future. This has been The Protocol is Active.